Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday, right? Wednesday? Yeah, Thursday. I'm a pro.
That's why we don't go live.
Nope. Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetzky, Andy Kamenetzky. The Lakers are playing the Pelicans tonight in the big semifinal in the in-season tournament. It's LeBron versus Zion, AD versus Ingram. Who's going to win? We'll talk about it with Jake Madison of Locked On Pelicans next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. This one's always free. It will never be behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where 22,000 subscribers are hanging out, talking about tonight's game in Vegas, Lakers versus Pelicans. This is an intriguing game under any circumstances, even more so given the stakes of a suddenly super popular in-season tournament. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I mentioned before our guest today is Jake Madison, host of Locked On Pelicans. We want to thank him for joining, and of course, thank any Pelicans fans who have sort of managed to accidentally, I suppose, wander over to our show because apparently Jake doesn't need this for his actual content.
I was going to say, I'm your guest here.
Right. I mean, you just
this show.
Yeah, no, I understand. You guys are big time now. You make one in-season tournament semifinal, and suddenly the bright lights get you. I understand how this goes, Jake.
Yeah, we got to act like we've been here before, basically.
Well, technically, nobody has, so it's okay.
Yeah, all jokes aside with this, Jake, like I get a sense that there are a lot of fans around the league, media around the league, who have kind of begrudgingly acknowledged that this is fun. It does feel like the intensity is ratcheting up, and whether they just want to roll with it or they have to sort of like begrudgingly go there, that it is exciting. Are you getting a sense on the Pelicans side that this is something they're getting into? Because like, I think Laker fans are liking this, but without trying to make this haves or have nots, like the Laker history is by any objective measure a little richer than the Pelicans.
No disrespect.
Right. I'm not trying to make it a dig. I just,
I mean, I couldn't
stop myself once I started.
I get the sense though, Jake, that it's almost more, it feels like it's been more important to teams like the Pelicans, not because, no history, whatever, but like small market and nobody pays attention to what is happening there. So like, the platforming here feels like a really big deal for the Pelicans.
So you make a great point there, and that's something that I brought up on Locked On NBA a lot because I'm on there every Wednesday. We've been talking about this the past couple of weeks, right? Like look at a team like the Indiana Pacers where Tyrese Halliburton has openly spoken about how he wants to win this, how he's like, this is the biggest game that I've ever played in my life in the NBA. He's never made the playoffs. Until Monday night, he had never been on a TNT game. Right? Like that's a burgeoning star who had never gotten on a national stage to like showcase his talent. Then he goes and does that and puts up his first career triple-double, right? Like I think they like it. You get a team.
First career triple-double?
First career triple-double. First time on national TV for him, right? Like that was a big deal for him. So I think you're getting a lot of these players, particularly in small markets, buying in a little bit because of they're getting some exposure they wouldn't get otherwise. I think the Pacers only have one other TNT game this season, right? Like, so he literally tripled potentially how many like national TV games he gets to showcase and kind of like build his brand, build his star. So all of this like does matter, right? LeBron has even said like, we're competitive. Like once the players bought into this, you realize this was going to be pretty fun because you didn't get them load managing guys on a Tuesday night in November, which seems like prime load management time. I like the courts. I think they look dumb, but they're kind of fun. Like having been in the Smoothie King Center, for these Pelicans games, like fans just get that something's different And that just creates a little bit more of an electric, I think, atmosphere in all of these arenas. So I think this has been a big success. We would be doing a crossover show right now. Well, technically, I wouldn't be a guest on your show right now.
In your mind, you're not doing a crossover show anyway. So.
Exactly.
We just took the time to put together a background and all that for you, but that's okay. You do with whatever the content, whatever you want. I have a hypothesis. So, Andy and I have, when we were talking about the Western Conference, we can get into this and carry it over to the next segment. When you look at teams that were sort of set to make the Memphis leap that Memphis made last year, like, fringy to, 2 seed or something like that.
Well, frankly, the Pelicans might have been, had they not been so injured.
Well, that's what I'm kind of getting to is, I think a lot of people had high hopes for the Pelicans and then kind of forgot about them because of the injuries and they happened so early. This year, I don't know if they got that same level of love. And it has been so, it's been a long time coming for guys to get back. We spent a lot of time talking about injuries and when will this guy return? God knows the Pelicans, you guys have been doing the same thing. Like as soon as this guy gets back, are the Pelicans kind of a sleeper team that at least for the games that everybody is healthy are capable of being a top 2, 3, 4 team in the West?
Yeah, maybe. I'd say on a small scale, yes. In a situation like this, absolutely, right? You're not playing a 7-game playoff series where the better team's more likely than not going to end up winning out. But in a 1-game elimination situation, you could have something fluky happen or just have a star or two in Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram go off, and that's going to be enough to carry you to a victory here, I think. So they're kind of built for a situation like this where there's maybe a little bit more chaos, where maybe there aren't certain scouting reports out on this team because they haven't been healthy. So you don't necessarily know what to prepare for, right? They've been starting at times a rookie in Jordan Hawkins, who isn't necessarily going to be widely known throughout the league. Trey Murphy just made his return from injury a week ago, right? Is he on the scouting reports? That's going to help you in an elimination game situation like this, I think. And that's kind of what makes them a little bit scary for the in-season tournament right now, I think. And that's what kind of makes this so much fun, that if you're this team, hey, you can kind of get back to the level that you think you should have been on, because Andy, you made that point, right? This was supposed to be the team that was going to be that young team that takes the leap behind their stars, never did because of injuries. Well, they're healthy now. If you win this whole thing, where does that put you and how much confidence does that add to this team going forward throughout the rest of the regular season?
I mean, along those lines, really quick before we break, the version of the Pelicans that beat the Kings 127-117 in Sacramento to advance to this stage, it's pretty much all hands on deck, I think, or at least most hands on deck. Is kind of like the way the Lakers are with Gabe Vincent. At this point, you're just, this is who the team is because we have no idea when Vincent will be back. Do you feel like that version that beat the Kings is actually pretty indicative of who they are at the moment, or is the sample size too small to know?
Let that just so Lakers fans understand. The starting lineup in that game was Zion, Ingram, Herb Jones, Valanciunas, and McCollum, with Murphy coming off the bench, Alvarado healthy again, Najee Marshall, again, and I guess Dyson Daniels. That
was basically it. They ran more or less an 8-man rotation, right? Dyson got one stint in there. Cody Zeller got one stint in there. I think they'll run that same rotation again. Maybe you see a guy like Jordan Hawkins get some minutes if they need more shooting. That was a little bit of a shock, but I'd say this to answer your question, Andy. No, I don't know if that game's indicative of this team yet. Maybe in terms of the rotation, yeah, but Zion scored 10 points and looked weirdly not interested in that game for whatever reason, to the point where Charles Barkley was talking about him after the game, right? They won that game on the road with Brandon Ingram having a superstar-like game, but got virtually nothing from Zion. If they can get something from Zion, they could win that game by 15 points potentially.
I'm super intrigued by the talent of this team and what they could be, because we've seen so little of Zion as the centerpiece of a team. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about matchups to watch for, and all sorts of other stuff coming up next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel, and you can celebrate this NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets back with any winning. $5 money line bet. So just pick a team. Don't worry about the spread. Bet $5. If you win, that's $150 with bonus bets. And you can use those bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, futures, all sorts of fun stuff. The app is really easy to use. All the options right there at your fingertips. And of course, there are NBA options for you to bet on as well. The Lakers are currently 21-1 to win the NBA championship. Pelicans 55-1. The Lakers 1.5 point favorites for tonight's semifinals game against the Pelicans. Anthony Davis currently 75-1 for MVP. LeBron 100-1. Same with Zion. Brandon Ingram 350-1 for MVP. Anthony Davis 6-1 for Defensive Player of the Year. Herb Jones 49-1. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Enjoy the NFL season. Enjoy sports with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Reminder, the Lakers play the Pelicans tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific time. The Lakers trying to punch their tickets to the finals in Vegas, the in-season tournament. Catch every basket of the Lakers hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Lakers.
What is the current opinion of Anthony Davis, like in New Orleans? Has any of that softened or changed or anything like that?
Has he thanked New Orleans on Instagram yet? Because until he does that, it's not going to be a good reception for him here, right? Like they really should have rebranded this, not as just the semifinal to go to the finals of the in-season tournament, but this should determine who is legally allowed to be said is the winner of the Anthony Davis trade, right? Like this is the culmination of that. Like that statement, that phrase should be on the line here. Did the Lakers win it or did the Pelicans win it? Based off this game alone and not the title that the Lakers won with Anthony Davis.
No, that was in the bubble. This isn't.
It doesn't
in the bubble.
count.
It doesn't count.
No, there's more distractions here in Vegas with everything.
Andy, what matchups are you kind of looking at for this game? Because again, I am fascinated by this lineup the Pelicans are putting out.
I'm expecting Cam Reddish to start on Brandon Ingram, and I'm really, really interested to see how that matchup goes, because if it ends up a direct match on both sides of the ball, Ingram, who is not, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jake, either expected to have that type of defensive impact or folks have just sort of resigned themselves to the idea that what Ingram looks like on paper defensively isn't who he is in actuality. But either way, Reddish is not a high-end defensive assignment, meaning he can really preserve all that energy for scoring, which makes him he's a difficult cover under any circumstances. But for Cam Reddish, who's really so far, we're early into the season, but so far seems to be reinventing himself as this very effective, very disruptive defensive wing. He really gave Devin Booker, issues on certain possessions, but also he was frankly pissing him off. Like Devin Booker, by the end of that game, was ready to swing at Reddish. And, as all of us people who've covered Brandon Ingram, we know he's somebody who's fine with the smoke. So I think this could be a really fun and important matchup.
Yeah, look, he was the hero for the Pelicans in their win over the Kings, 30 points. He was great in that one, and he did it at all three levels, which we know he's capable of doing here. So trying to find a way to slow him down is key. He was frustrated in the first half. They were playing him really, really physically. He thought he should have been going to the line way more than he did. And then that seemed to just kind of like wake him up and piss him off, frankly, and let him then just start attacking. As you said, he's fine with the smoke. He kind of likes those kind of moments, I think, with everything. Putting Reddish on him, I also think means then what you're going to have LeBron on Zion to start would be my guess, because that's what they've done in the past with him. These teams, when they played in December of last year, so about a year ago now, that was the only time Zion played the Lakers last year. LeBron guarded him. There was no Ingram in that game. So I think those are the two key matchups to all of this, right? Like if you can slow down both Zion and BI or even limit one of them, I think is how the Lakers are obviously looking to win the game. That's not like breaking news or anything here, or deep analysis. But, Reddish with Ingram, if you can slow him down, that's big, because there's ways to limit Zion by just walling off the rim. And when that happens, you need Ingram to have a big game to take that scoring load. Zion didn't get anything going against the Kings because they, again, build the wall around the rim and force him to do it. He can still score, but if he's limited, if BI's not stepping up or not effective, it just makes it even easier to contain Zion. Eventually, BI got hot and they started doubling him instead, and it opened things up for Zion. So you need that like pressure release valve, essentially, whether that's going to be Ingram, whether it's going to be CJ. I'd even look at like Trey Murphy and Herb Jones capable of doing that here, because Herb, known as a good defender, has been very good offensively for the team this year. So the Pelicans are going to need those other guys to really step up, but it's going to fall on Brandon Ingram's shoulders, certainly.
Well, that was going to be my question, is because you say like they do seem like they have guys who can score. If I feel the same about the Lakers, by the way. Like, yeah, the knock on the Lakers is, well, if AD or LeBron, you need both of those guys, and if they can't do it, then there have probably been too many of those nights where it's been true. Like you shut down AD or LeBron, one of those guys has an off night, and there isn't enough supporting cast. But D'Lo's averaging about 17 points a game, and Reeves has turned things around, I think, as more or less as a scorer, and they've got guys who can, maybe not all at once, but between the two, everybody picks up an extra 4 or 5 or 6 points. I feel like, especially if Jones is going to be a viable offensive player, and he hasn't always been, that just changes the complexion of this matchup. I want to ask you, what's up with Valanciunas? Because like I see him, you guys have seen those tweets or the clips of that guy who like strips down to his underwear and holds axes and like big muscly guy like leaps into frozen Nordic water like from like 150 feet. That's every time I see that guy, I think of Valanciunas. Like I'm not like that. He's a slightly crazy, large beard. But he's not talked about somebody as an effective center, but he kind of is. And in this
he's
game,
a
I think
workhorse.
could be really important.
He's bailed the team out in a couple of games so far this season. When you look at him, right, he's the fourth option on offense in that starting lineup. With how Herb Jones has played offensively this season, you could argue the fifth. So he gets kind of forgotten about a lot. And what the Pelicans want to do defensively is switch on the perimeter. He can't really do that, so it sometimes limits his minutes. But when they play through him, the dude is effective. Like he can score at the basket. He's that big lumbering center that can throw his strength around, back guys down, score over him in a variety of different ways. And it opens things up when they get him the ball and kind of play him out of that like mid post area. It creates for others. And I would not be shocked if you see that, especially if it's going to be a guy like Jackson Hayes guarding him a little bit. He's going to try and take advantage of that matchup because I don't think Hayes is going to be able to have the strength to hang right there. And that just opens things up more. Watch one thing you'll see them do though a lot is run a lot of dribble handoffs through Jonas Valanciunas, particularly for Zion Williamson. Just that big body, right? Sticking the ball out. Zion curls around him, gets the ball. All of a sudden now that creates space and Zion is working downhill. And that's how Zion can be his most effective. And if that's happening and they're walling off the rim, a shooter's going to be open, whether it's Herb Jones, CJ, Trey Murphy, someone like that. That's where a lot of this offense has been kind of built around. So even if it's not Valanciunas scoring, it's the way they're using him. He's had a couple of games where he'll have 4 or 5 assists, and they're basically all off of those simple dribble handoff actions, creating some space just with his body like that. It's effective. It works. So he's been really good for this team, I think. And even the backup Cody Zeller of all people has been like effective in limited minutes because they're just not asking that center spot to do too much. And I think that works in the context and the flow of their offense right now. But Valanciunas is also capable of getting you 30 points. If they're going to just leave him open under the basket one-on-one, they're going to get him the ball and let him beat the Lakers till the Lakers adjust. And then that just opens things up for the rest of the other guys.
Last thing, at least for me before the break, like you mentioned, that he can be played off the floor depending on what the other team is doing. How hard do you think Willie Green will work to keep Valanciunas on the floor for this matchup? And then what is the most effective way for the Lakers to play him off if that's what they really want to do?
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to play him off, you have to attack him in the pick and roll. He's not a good pick and roll defender. So spamming that just right at him is a way to get him taken off the court. I don't think that's what the Pelicans necessarily want to do. I think they view him as a guy that you can run their offense through, can spring Zion for buckets, Ingram for buckets too, but they don't mind if he's off there. They don't have Larry Nance Jr. That's like the one significant injury for the team right now. They like playing small closing games with him, but they're also running Zion at the 5 and putting a bunch of shooters around Zion. And when you have Trey Murphy, who's going to be a 40% shooter this season on volume, same with CJ McCollum. And what shocked me the most in the win over the Kings was Brandon Ingram took 6 threes. He made 3 of them, and all 3 of those were off of dribble handoff actions with Zion. So if you put shooters around Zion, it just opens things up so much. So if you do play Valanciunas off, a shooter's going to be coming in. It's going to be a small ball lineup. That's at times tough to defend, I think, for most teams. Now, their defense is terrible, so you need to be able to score, and LeBron and AD can do that against this team when they're playing super small. But you're going to have to keep up almost every single possession there. And so I think the Pelicans can view that as a strength of theirs too.
You mentioned Trey Murphy, and I want to talk a little bit about just how he's looked since he's been back, because I think he's a really underrated part of this Pelicans team, and also a particular part of the Pelicans defense that I think will really need to show out if they want to end up beating the 1.5 point spread from our friends at FanDuel and actually getting to the finals. So we will talk about that coming up next. Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Prize Picks, the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. And instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 players, their stats projections, watch the winnings roll in up to 25 times your money. And with basketball in full swing, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, created specifically for projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron, Travis Kelce, 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. With the Prize Picks reboot policy, this is key. Your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured for NFL games, NBA games. If you have a player who exits the game in the first half because of injury, doesn't return in the second, that player gets rebooted. And Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform anywhere, injury insurance. That is huge. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Reminder, the Lakers play the Pelicans tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific time. The Lakers trying to punch their tickets to the finals in Vegas, the in-season tournament. Catch every basket of the Lakers hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Lakers. So Trey Murphy missed a big chunk of the season to begin. How has he looked since he started, and what's been the effect of having him back overall on the team?
He looks good. He's only played 2 games, so there's only so much to read into this right now, but he looks good. The first game back, he hit 4 threes. That'll work. That's what he's there to really try and do, to try and come out and space the court. But he's just added so much to his game. You know, he was in the dunk contest last season, so he can put the ball in the court and drive to the basket, attack bad closeouts, things like that. He was 3 of 8 from deep against the Sacramento Kings. This is a guy that is not scared to take shots. He's not scared to take deep shots, too. He'll rip 30-foot 3-pointers without any sort of hesitation, with good size. He's 6'9", 6'10", somewhere in that range, plays good enough defense, helps them with rebounding. It's just an offensive threat and a guy that they were missing. This was a team, the Pelicans, that wanted to shoot more threes this year. They haven't been doing that because CJ McCollum had been hurt, Trey Murphy had been hurt. But in 2 games for Trey, it looks like he hasn't missed a beat. You're already seeing instant chemistry between him and Zion out there on the court. He is just that safety release valve for Zion. Zion's operating from the 3-point line, starts to drive. If it's not there, he's looking for Trey, and Trey's already been assisted on. I think in that game where he went 4 of 10, 3 of them came off of Zion dimes. That'll work. That's exactly what the Pelicans need. This is a guy that, can score at almost all 3 levels. The mid-range quite isn't there, but he can get to the basket. He can shoot threes. He's got good size. Just kind of perfect player for this Pelicans team right now.
And then also, both of these teams look to get to the free throw line a lot. They're both good at doing it. The Lakers are extremely good at keeping teams off the free throw line. How good are the Pelicans in terms of keeping opponents off it? Because that could be a really big thing in this game in terms of how these teams go about trying to score.
They're about middle of the pack. When they run Herb Jones and Dyson Daniels out there together, I don't think we'll see Dyson Daniels too much. I don't know. They're just very good at slowing down and mucking up opponents' offenses without fouling. Herb Jones does that. It allows Zion to roam a little bit, similar to like what LeBron James does at times for the Lakers too. Then he can just kind of hunt for steals, things like that. And then this team wants to get out and run in transition. There are moments though, and this might be the key to this one, where Herb Jones the past couple of games has gotten into foul trouble in the first half, needed to sit, makes him a little bit more tentative in the second half. For whatever reason, he doesn't get a very, healthy, good whistle from the officials here. If he's in foul trouble early, and I would assume the Lakers are going to almost not hunt him necessarily, but see if you can get him to pick up one or two little kind of cheap fouls, that like significantly, in my opinion, changes the complexion of this game.
Because the Pelicans would lose, not a great defensive team, and you lose what Jones offers.
Yeah, I mean, it's that, he's the wing stopper, right? This is the guy that is their best defensive player and can just mess up anybody. Like it's again, I'm being a little bit biased and homerish, right? But like, he should be in the running and should have been in the past couple of years on the all defensive teams. He's that good with some of the things he does, the steals and the blocks. This guy blocks an uncanny amount of 3-point attempts, which is not something you normally see in the NBA at these sorts of levels.
You won't have much of that going on against the Lakers.
So, the fact that he can kind of be a lockdown defender, and I don't know if they're going to put him on LeBron James to start.
That's what I was going to ask.
I'm not sure where they're going to throw him. They throw him kind of everywhere. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if he starts on Russell necessarily, right? Like, that seems to make a little bit more sense. Might be a little bit safer for Herb Jones to start on there too, and you put Ingram on LeBron James, kind of knowing that LeBron is going to go and get his, especially in an elimination game when he's stepping up.
The only thing about that's interesting here, and Andy, maybe you comment too, like, this is where those opening matchups are intriguing, especially related to LeBron, because LeBron doesn't typically come out of the gate of these games like gunning. He doesn't typically put a ton of pressure on defenses early. That said, this is a different kind of game. This is in Vegas, where LeBron said he's looking forward to bringing his team one day. He didn't mean this one. He meant the one he owns. So, like, the Vegas environment is something special and different to him. What do you think Andy LeBron is going to do in this first quarter? Because he will often kind of lay back. And if that's the case, you don't necessarily need Herb Jones on him.
Well, I was going to, before even getting into that, I actually think that Herb Jones is a logical cover for D'Lo, because I think Herb is the type of defender that sometimes gives D'Lo fits. And, when you've seen D'Angelo Russell's struggle sometimes, it is often against those type of really good defensive guards, because D'Lo doesn't have the type of athleticism or speed. He's not somebody that's going to blow by you. He's really good at just probing and picking his spots, and he tries to outthink the game. But that's going to be that to me feels actually like a very logical starting spot for Jones. So curious to see if you predicted this right, Jake. As far as LeBron goes, I expect him to follow a lot of what he's been doing so far all season. The game against the Suns, might not have been in Vegas, but it was just as important if you want to go to Vegas. And it didn't feel like LeBron was playing in any way out of what has been established character for this season. And, I think it's also very important often to just get AD off to a really big start. And by the way, it's another reason to put Herb Jones on D'Lo, because very often AD's great starts directly involve D'Angelo Russell, because nobody on this team, whether you're talking eye test anecdotally or just look up the stats on NBA.com, nobody on this team passes to Anthony Davis more than D'Lo. Like, frankly, it's not even close. So if Herb Jones messes that up for D'Lo, it doesn't just mess up his individual game. It actually could mess up some of what goes on with AD.
That's key, right? Like AD's had good games against the Pelicans anytime he's played them since the trade. So I think slowing him down for New Orleans is really going to be up there. One, just for like pride. I still think as an organization, they don't like the way his exit happened. And so I would be shocked. That's what I think they're going to do. Yeah, different shirt, right? We're going to be curious to see what he wears to this game here. It's I think
should wear the same "That's All, Folks" shirt. I mean, like, as long as you're going to be hated, lean into it.
Just go for it, right? Like, trust me, they're not. I don't think that love's ever going to come back here in New Orleans for him. So yeah, you may as well go full on villain route with it all. But yeah, I expect Herb Jones on D'Angelo Russell. I expect Brandon Ingram on LeBron to start. We'll see. I'm going to be curious depending on how it goes if you see more Dyson Daniels, because that's two very good defenders the Pelicans can throw at kind of the point of attack, which sounds like a pain if I were playing against this team. So it'll be interesting to see if the rotation changes for Willie Green, if it's just going to be mainly those 8 guys they did before, if he adjusts it a little bit too. But if they can get Herb Jones in some foul trouble early, like all of a sudden kind of the floodgates open for the Lakers, they're going to score more. The Pelicans can't get out and run in transition where they're pretty deadly. And all of a sudden then it feels like New Orleans could be on the back foot.
Last question.
Oh, go ahead, Andy.
Real quick. Last question I have. Is there an X factor guy that you look at for the Pelicans?
Yeah, like I'd say Trey. Like I'd say it'd be Trey Murphy, who we talked about earlier, right? Like this is a guy who had a 40-point game last season against the Clippers. Like he's very capable of going off. He's been a starter. He knows how to do that role. He looks fully healthy. I don't think he's on as much of a minutes restriction as he was for these first couple of games. So I think they're going to look to unleash him. And I think he's going to have the green light to take as many threes as he wants. So if he has one of those games where he goes 7 for 10, 8 for 10 from 3, something like that, right? He's done it. He's done it a couple times. That kind of like blows things wide open then, and it's just going to make it so much easier for a guy like Zion to work because he needs the space. You don't not double Zion, right? For a guy that shoots 72% at the rim, you need shooters. It's the equivalent of like 47%, something like that from 3. Those guys don't really exist in the NBA. You need shooters to make teams pay for double teaming Zion, not to necessarily space the court for him, because I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Trey's one of those guys that will absolutely make teams pay. So if he's left open, I'm going to be curious to see what he's going to be able to do.
My last question is really about Zion as he relates to these other stars. Like when you look at the stars of this game, this is not to do the Halliburton story again from the beginning of the show, but like to some degree, that's kind of the opportunity. Zion's a little more high profile than Tyrese Halliburton, but has not exactly been all over national TV since his career started. He hasn't played much.
That's it.
But
yeah.
His numbers, especially over the last, 5-10 games, have been insane. What is the thing that sticks out? Like because Lakers fans have, most people haven't seen a ton of Zion. So when he's playing well and healthy, what is it that sticks out about him in a matchup of stars where LeBron is one of the other stars, where Anthony Davis is one of the other stars?
You know what Zion's going to do in this game. He's going to go to his left and he's going to try and score at the rim. The Lakers, you and I know this, which means the Lakers know this, right? Like all of the fans watching this game are going to know this immediately, that this is what Zion's doing. And he still does it at an insanely high rate. Again, 72% at the rim this season, I think, is what he's scoring, with everyone knowing what he's doing. He is quicker than people realize. Look, jokes get made about his weight and all of that. He is lightning fast when he wants to be, with some of those kind of like quick, short burst movements. And he can go score, and he's crafty around the rim. He's going to remind you at times of like a big man version of Kyrie Irving with some of the finishing that he has. And that's how he dominates the game. I hear a lot of Pelicans fans saying like he needs a jumper, he needs a mid-range shot. Not when you're shooting 72% at the rim, even when teams know that you're doing it. Just go and do the thing you're really good at. Everyone knows this, and no one can stop him. So that's why you've got to commit like 2, 3, 4 defenders at times to try and do it. So it's going to be about getting Zion going early. And if you can, like, look out, because he's capable of going for 30, 40 on any given night, I think.
I am super excited about the way that this tournament shook out. I am a big fan of any Lakers-Kings game, but I just saw a couple of those, and now I want to see the Lakers against the Pelicans, especially a full Pelicans squad, as full as it's going to get, and the Lakers as full as it's going to get in terms of meaningful players for a little while. Jake Madison, he is the host of Locked on Pelicans. Thanks so much for being our guest. Thank you, and thank you again to any Pelicans fans who accidentally wandered over here because, Jake.
Comment down below and tell him how much you love Anthony Davis.
Write
a manifesto about it.
Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with many thousands, 22,000 Lakers fans, and maybe some Pelicans fans now as well. They do pop up periodically. This is going to be a great game. We will be back to talk about it on Friday.